Do, 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 do. Welcome to the Friends with Benefits podcast, a business podcast about revenue-generating partnerships, not a podcast about business time with friends. We're your co-hosting couple. I'm Jason.
And I'm Sam. Welcome to the show, friends.
Welcome back to the episode, friends. We are so stoked to be podcasting yet again. We're somewhere close to episode 10 now. We're not quite there yet, but as soon as we hit that double-digit point, we should probably have a party, Sam.
It's official.
I'm super stoked about today's show. It's a very exciting show because, you know what, we actually have another couple with us today. More what we might call friends with benefits, right? In the literal term, possibly. But joining us today, it's not just any couple. They're the epitome of a power partner couple. He's a channel influencer of the year. She's a channel chief officer. Together, they fit all the continents in over 85 countries and a few kids. By now, I'm sure most of you know that I'm talking about Jay and Michelle McBain. Welcome to the show, friends.
Thanks so much.
Great.
I'll be here.
Hey, it's great to see you both. Really fun to have another partner couple here with us.
So let's just go ahead and kick this off because we were doing some research, looking at LinkedIn's and listening to videos that you guys have been on. And we want to start somewhere maybe unexpected. Let's talk about rollerblades and Red Bull. Jay, you want to lead us into that?
I would be happy to. So you kind of kicked things off talking about travel. And we met at a charity dinner. And that was our first conversation. And it was a funny one because we were kind of sitting together and, she asked me about travel. I guess in her dating life before me, she had some, challenges with people who didn't like to travel, and she loves to travel. And I kind of said, I love to travel. By the way, a week or two ago, I was just in Brazil watching the World Cup on the beach with 1 million people. And then I flew to Argentina and I watched their game from the beach. And she looked at me and said, well, I was in South Africa in that stadium playing the Vuvuzela, Vuvuzela, at the goal and they were watching. And then I looked at her and said, well, in 2 weeks, I'm going to South Africa and I'm going to rent a car and I'm going to drive through 8 African countries if they allow me in with my rollerblades. And I'm going to rollerblade across Africa. She's
Amazing.
like, what? And I said, well, I just did. I rollerbladed through Europe. I rollerbladed through Asia. And, I put thousands and thousands of miles on my rollerblades. And I went through 14 European countries in 8 days. And you can't do that, and sleep at the same time. So I drink a whole bunch of Red Bull. And at the time, early in life, I wrote a blog about it. And it went on page 1 of Google for 10 years. If you Googled rollerblades or Red Bull, my blog was on page 1.
Those are the
Red
keywords
Bull
you rank for.
ended up sponsoring me at some point.
No way.
A lot of Red Bull. It was a great opportunity.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
He gave him
That's
wings.
outstanding.
And it gave me social media SEO clout.
There you go.
Yeah, and it gave you a whole new relationship. Look at that.
Well, that's it.
Did. But I know rollerblades. So from now on, we've done the rest of the continents on foot.
Sans rollerblades.
Okay.
What about the wheelies? Those little shoes, you gotta compromise.
I consider the Heelys. My daughters both have them. But I still have Red Bull.
Amazing.
Have that going for us.
Okay, so there is one commonality.
Millions of miles and about how many Red Bulls?
The good news is I still get to strap on the rollerblades. We got a husky dog together who's a championship sled dog out of Maine.
In Florida.
Florida.
Live in Florida. So every day I get to water ski behind the dog on rollerblades as a sled
awesome.
dog pulls me around our Florida neighborhood. So I don't even have to, break a sweat because I just, get pulled around the neighborhood by the dog.
The dream lives on. I love it.
I used to do that with our dog and I had a little skateboard. I'll just get her to pull me to the market to get a sandwich and then pull me home.
Yeah, there you go.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. Very talented.
It's a lot of
animal.
fun. There's a lot of similarities here in our relationships, which is quite funny, between the travel and how we met and kind of the age gap and everything else and the careers. We'll save that for another discussion, but it's very interesting to see kind of the comparisons here.
I love it.
So you guys are, obviously both in the same career, right? I assume you probably are like us, you're in partnerships, we're in partnerships, talk about, work quite often around the dinner table. Talk to us about your relationship, at home and as, partnership professionals.
Well, I would say that was the foundation of a lot of similarities. Other similarities we had, as you mentioned, we lived a mile apart from each other. We both worked in the same industry. We both worked in technology, both worked in the channel more specifically. So it's very rare when you find somebody that can understand what you do for a living or has done what you do for a living and understands the people and the community and the road warrior life. So from a professional standpoint, we're very aligned. I always joke and tell people our dinner conversations are probably so riveting for other couples.
Same.
Yeah, we get it.
What we live and do. And we're very passionate about our work. Personally, we're also very family oriented and we love spending time with our children. We love traveling the world with them and having adventures and teaching them about different food and cultures and listening to different music and dances and really experiencing that. So I'd like to say we work hard and we play hard, but to have lifestyles that we do takes a lot of balance and a lot of partnership. I don't think there's any balance. Actually, I'll take that back. I think it's integration. I always say, like, for women, they always ask, well, how do you do work-life balance? Well, there's no such thing, right? Sometimes one's higher, sometimes one's lower, sometimes he's in the air and I'm in the air, or we're both in the air at the same time. And so how do you create a relationship is really by any partnership, really. You have to nurture it, you have to invest in it, you have to grow with it, you have to listen to each other. That's a really big component. And I think we're both really good at partnerships, so that's a good thing for our relationship.
There's also a major piece of logistics. There's a lot of logistics that happen. This morning we got to spend an hour together with her company, the Sonic Wall executive team, talking about go-to-market and stuff, but we're purely in our business category there, talking about go-to-market strategies and things like that. But earlier this week, over Christmas, we took our kids to the South Pole, and we just took them to the North Pole on an Alaskan cruise. But coming back, the logistics is, well, I have to do a speech Monday morning where, in front of 1,300 managed service providers. She had a reason to be there too. So here's our kids in Denver with us after 2 weeks of, kind of being away in Alaska, packing with our winter jackets. And then on the way, the next day, she's like, well, I have to be in Pennsylvania at a D&H event doing a speech. So she's splitting off from Denver and going to Dallas after we were in Alaska and Vancouver and California. Again, 2.5 weeks away from being from home. I'm trying to get the kids home from Miami. She's, missing flights out of Dallas and spending a night at a, ratty hotel and trying to get home. And that's this week. That was, Sunday, the cruise, Monday, the speech, Tuesday, the travel difficulties, Wednesday, her getting home. And here's, by the end of the week, Friday, we're together in front of her executive team.
And thank God for Red Bull.
Full circle.
So we were going to kind of get to this later, but we've just kind of come here. So I feel that in my bones. I know Jason does too, specifically because I've been on the road for the last month. So he's been like solo parenting the whole time, but he also has a big career and we definitely like shift that back and forth. So you kind of went into this, but like, how have you supported each other in doing it all and growing your career and, being good partners to each other, but also being good partners to your communities and your jobs? Like and parenting, those are all separate full-time jobs.
Yeah, I'd say, I jump in and say that no one's perfect, right? You have to invest in it and you have to grow and nurture and you have to listen and learn. Like I used to love when I met couples that were married 50 years and I'd say, what's the secret? And they always have very similar answers, which is you have to have patience, you have to have forgiveness, and you have to have the ability to want to make it work. And I think that's the truth, right? Like we have to, he's my best friend. Like when something great happens or something bad happens or sad happens, like the first person I want to tell is my husband and my best friend.
Love that.
And vice versa. So we have a very foundational friendship amongst everything else. we cheer each other on, we celebrate each other's wins, we encourage each other's successes. I wouldn't be able to do what I do or vice versa if we didn't have a supportive and encouraging partner. If he felt, that he couldn't travel, I'm like, oh, you're traveling too much, I need you home more. It's like, no, I know I'm going to travel too. How unrealistic was me to have unrealistic expectations of him or our relationship? So it's an ebb and flow, and we're going to have to be considerate of that. And me also, I'm very much a feminist and I'm equal opportunist. So there are many days when Jay's cooking dinner now. He didn't cook before our marriage, and during COVID, I was like, have at it and learn, because you can't do all the things. So, we have to divide and conquer. We both do laundry. We both do the housework. We both do the kids. He takes them to school. I pick them up from school. It's really just a very reciprocal relationship where we're equals in it, and we encourage each other's equality and support each other, or it would be not helpful. And there are times where, Jay did a startup for years and, didn't take a salary, or I was part of a startup, and, so you ebb and flow, like who's the leader and who's the supporter and vice versa. And then at times you're both in a power position, and it's great to have that. But even when you're not, you're going to support each other regardless. I think that's the biggest part of it.
I think there's so many things that we could parallel there to like actual partnership relationships. Like you talked about setting expectations from the get-go so nobody's disappointed when somebody doesn't uphold their side, or, what is the purpose of this partnership? How are we going to both show up to the table and equally support? And I think those are some things that maybe aren't discussed in business settings that absolutely should be. And Jason and I have talked about that, how that's something in our relationship too, but it shouldn't stop there. That should go into the business world as well.
So we tend to complement each other as well. Being in a partnership, if you're both superstars in literally one place, the team doesn't win. You don't all, great quarterbacks. You don't have all great goalies in hockey or whatever else, but you play as a team. And, I may reflect, like the way my brain works is a bit more logical, numeric. Being an analyst, it works that I answer every question in the form of a number. It's a lot of the emotional and the, kind of other pieces to the equation. So 1 + 1 = 3, which is a perfect partnership. The other thing, aligning your values, which are, well aligned. But, back to Stephen Covey, kind of working with the end in mind.
Absolutely.
It's a little bit directive, and you don't know every turn. You don't know how you're going to get there. But if you're both climbing the mountain kind of with the same goal, the same summit, and again, it's not the same job, it's not the exact specific thing, but I want to be an industry curmudgeon, one of that old man and shakes fist at cloud.
The guy sitting in the balcony in the Muppets.
Yeah.
And she wants to be a high-powered, channel chief and everything else. So if we're beginning with that end in mind, we support everything, every action, every tactic along this partnership along the way goes to support that longer-term goal.
I love that. And Sam and I were actually sitting at dinner last night and lovely business conversations, and it kind of went down the track of work, but then it became like, okay, well, what are our values and goals, and what do we want to accomplish over the next few years? So it's kind of having that understanding, to your point, of like, what's the mutual path that we're on here, and like, what do we want to accomplish? And to Sam's point, like, you can really utilize that back into the business context, especially in like the work that we all do. And it's like, how do you provide value in these relationships and establish these long-term goals with your partners?
We get to do our QBRs, both of us, like at the dinner table. And,
yes.
We're literally having these partnership conversations, but again, with two different views. It's this idea of, here's where we want to be. We had a goal to hit 100 countries, and over the next year or so, we're going to hit that goal. But then Michelle will remind me that there's 93 countries that we haven't been to. And so, and look at timing and look at everything else. And the best way to hit those countries is by sailboat. And so we look at the age of our children. We look at, when they're going to be in college. Again, we look at our own, financial picture and how things look as we climb the mountain. But, it costs $1 million to buy a sailboat. It's not cheap. So let's get in a position where, we can get the right thing at the right time. And, by the time, we're 100 years old, we can say we've sailed by and touched 193 countries, well above our goal. But, now we've hit everything. That's the travel goal. Obviously, being able to include our children and our families and everything else, as part of that goals, help them, as well, get a love for the world and other cultures and everything else, and do all these things together is, again, just joint planning, very tactical, very action oriented. But the energy you put into the universe, if you believe The Secret or whatever those books were, kind of put, the future that we're going to reach that mountaintop. We don't know how, but, it's just going to happen. That's the energy we put together.
And I think I will also say that Jay and I are very goal-oriented and we're very competitive professionally and personally. So we have a few things that kind of allow us to basically meet and exceed. And that's why I think our personalities are alike in some ways, really strong in those core foundational areas. And then we're very different. As he said, he's an introvert, although you'd never know it. Like, he goes to an event, he pushes all his energy to speak main stage in front of 10,000 people, and then he wants to retreat to his room and just be in his basketball shorts watching hockey, standing in the finals. I survive on energy. Like, COVID was really hard for me. Like, I need to be around 1,000 people, and I love relationships. I love nurturing them. I love building them. That's why I love partnerships. I love people are more than a connection or a business transaction for me. This is going to be like a lifelong relationship, and we're going to have a friendship, and I'm going to know your children's names and your pets' names, and we're going to have this really intimate connection when I have that relationship with somebody. And so I think that may not be Jay's, like, he's not emotional type of guy, but he's very caring person. But we have very different ways of engaging with other people and each other. And so that's part of it, right? Knowing that it's okay to have autonomy. It's okay to have differences. And it's okay to complement each other in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. And now we're really getting into the context of, like, why we started this partnership, to talk about relationships and what we can build and how they become purpose-built, even in our careers. But something I wanted to kind of drill into real quick that you were talking about is, like, this notion that healthy relationships require goals, right? And I think it's worth kind of, like, highlighting that right now is, like, Sam and I have goals. Jay and Michelle, you guys have goals, and, like, healthy personal relationships should have goals. Marriages should have goals, but also, around the, topic of, partnerships, like, those healthy relationships should have goals, right? QBRs, mutual action plans, annual planning, stuff like that, and understanding where you're both going and why you're entering into this partnership in the first place. So, like, I think there's a really good opportunity for people to just kind of think about the goals they have, in all their relationships with their spouse, their partner, their best friend, brother, business partners, etc. So, like, just wanted to call that out real quick, and I love the fact that you guys have goals of what you want to do, both personally and professionally.
Yeah, and I'll touch on what you just said, because I think that's really valuable. And I think that it comes from a place of two things. One, complacency. If you feel comfort, you're not growing in your business, in yourself, in your relationship. You shouldn't be too comfortable. You should want to challenge yourself, and you should want to grow, or you should want to see the best results possible. And that's how you kind of take where you are and keep iterating to the next level. And part of, I think, in my work, when I have a relationship, especially now joining a company just a month ago, first is the listening and learning period, not only within my team and the organization, but within our partners. What's working? What's not? How do I do better? And actually not thinking you're the best at everything, and really understanding. And that same principles holds in every relationship. Like, what's working, what's not, and what could we do better? What could we do differently? Because I think when you get comfortable, you don't grow.
I completely agree. And I'm big into this concept of peak performance. I actually just read the book Peak Performance by Steve Mangus and Brad Stolberg. If you haven't read it yet, their whole principle for peak performance and growth is stress plus rest equals growth. So stress is about, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable and doing those things that are just kind of outside your reach, outside of your boundaries, to challenge yourself, and then take some time to kind of, to rest, reflect, and kind of think about it, and then figure out what you could have done better, where you've succeeded, where you failed, kind of thing, and then you begin to grow as a result. So again, kind of the same thing in relationships. You can challenge a relationship. You can find challenges within your goals and how to make each other better, and then kind of take some time and then reflect, continue growing.
Good partnerships, there's obviously goals, there's alignment, there's things like that. But, as an analyst, I study good partnerships. Right there's processes in a good marriage. There's processes in a good partnership. There's workflows. There's logic, business logic around it. There are underlying, programmatic ways, to derive better partnerships. There is underlying technology. And a lot of this, like, when you read books about goals and rest and, things like that, it motivates you on that side. But what do you do the next morning when you wake? Actions and tactics. Literally, what do you do minute to minute? And, we have a lot of underlying support structure built to support kind of this chaos. I haven't been to a grocery store in 3 years. It's all automated.
Yep.
Thank you, shit.
Jeff Bezos,
Amen.
Jeff Bezos put a little sticker of Michelle on his spaceship because we bought one of the wings of the spaceship. But
Stamped a basis.
there's an entire, both of us run about 100 joint systems on our phones with apps that manage our travel, that manage our goals, that manage all the day in and day out pieces. So we can have movie night with the kids every single night. So that means that some of the other things either need to be outsourced or need to be streamlined and need to be automated. And so a lot of this partnership, people miss this piece of it. It's great to have goals. It's great to have these, great alignment at a top level. But a lot of partnerships break down not on that. It breaks down on the day-to-day.
Amen. Yes.
Absolutely.
On, those, kind of ugly details on how to make it all work in a kind of a chaotic world.
Absolutely.
I think that's so great. And that's certainly, you listen to influencers, you read the podcasts, or listen to the podcast, read the blogs, and it's all the high level strategy, but you're so spot on, Jay. I think the actual tactics and getting into the day-to-day work is where rubber meets the road, and that's where the real people build good partnerships. So you kind of get into this, but to double click on that, most partnerships are measured by like revenue generated. Not so, like, in your perspective, how do you truly measure the success of these relationships, these partnerships? Not KPIs, but the success of the relationship itself.
I'll defer to the analyst. Don't look at me first. I want to hear your answer.
It's
analyze relationships.
It's called divorce avoidance. It's an acronym called DA. But no, it's the way you measure is, again, you can't measure every turn. And much like partnership, everybody would love to measure every moment and every moment of value, and it's just not realistic. But again, at some point, you've got to, again, look back at the top of the mountain you're climbing together and make sure you're making progress. Day in and day out, you're going to take, you're going to slide down a hill, you're going to take pitfalls and then things like that. But these quarterly business reviews, when you're, talking at dinner, when you happen to go on a vacation and get a chance to, kind of realign and accept that road trips with this. But yeah, you got to kind of, at some point, you can't let a couple of quarters go by and you haven't made any progress, up the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
So measuring progress without measuring, every particular, seventh level decimal point, level of progress. Yeah. You just got to make sure that you're on this kind of journey together.
Yeah. It's incremental progress.
Yeah, absolutely. It's incremental, and I'll use this term. So we have a shared mutual friend, a good friend named Rob Ray, who just recently joined Pax8, and I spent a lot of time on the road with Rob, and I joke sometimes. I'm like, I'm not sure who my favorite Canadian is because they're both Canadians. But Rob and I are sitting there, and our internal joke is Rob has probably had a beer with every managed service provider in the entire world and bought them a beer. And there was a man sitting there, and he was talking to me, and he said, Rob's bought me beers for 17 years. And I said, oh, are you a partner of his? He said, I'm not, but I feel really guilty and I think I need to convert. And I told Rob that story and he said, it's all about the long game.
I like Rob already.
I could use in our marriage. Like, it's not about the short day to day. Although one of my favorite quotes was from Vanilla Sky, and they said, the little things in life, there's nothing bigger. And I really love that because it is the little things that are so meaningful and that are so remembering. Like, you could do so many great things, but sometimes those funny little quirks about each other are what you remember, or those moments that were unplanned, that everything went awry, but you handled it really well and laughed about it. Those are the things that, it's not what happens to you, it's how you react to them, right? A lot of people will say that. And that's the truth. Like, you're going to have bumps and hang-ups. You're going to have bad moments and bad days and get hangry. You're going to have all of that in your life and your relationship and your marriage. And you're going to have bad incidents with your partners. And how do you react to it? How do you recover from it? How do you ensure that you're continuing to invest in it? And I think that's the long game. You're not worried about immediate things, right?
There's so much value just in what I've seen in building partnerships in that incremental progress, right? It's like to what you were saying, like if you come up against these hurdles and these obstacles, you've kind of, even in a relationship, you've taken things slow enough to grow and grow and grow and get to a certain point to achieve some certain goals. So you've built enough relational equity with your partners, whether it's, personal, professional in this context, professional, these partnership programs. If you've taken it slow, you've built it right, done the right thing, provided value, established trust, gotten the relationship right, you can overcome the obstacles that are thrown your way. You've gone from the proverbial sea level to 5,000 feet of altitude, to where you can begin to climb more of the summits to get to what Jay is talking about.
Yeah.
So most people try to go all in and try to bite off more than they can chew, more than the relationship can handle, and they stress it to the point where it can't recover, right? It doesn't give it enough chance to grow and rest and get that growth that we were just talking about.
Yeah, no, it's no rain, no rainbows, right? You have to have a little bit of darkness to have that light. And it takes work. Like, I used to do this when I was a consultant and I was teaching people about building their brand or social selling. And I say, okay, you want to be really good at something. Say it's the same equivalent of, I want to lose 50 pounds and have 6-pack abs. So I go to the gym once, I run as fast as I can, I do a few abs, and I lift some weights. Do I have a 6-pack now? No, I give up. Like, that's not how it works. It takes time and commitment and dedication, and you have to continue to water the grass. The grass is not greener on the other side. It's greener where you water it. And if you're investing in that, you're watering and you're nurturing it, then you're going to see results.
Yes, absolutely. So let's use that as a little transition point here to talk about some grass on the other side. So Jay, I've seen somewhere, I've heard you talk about spending time where your people spend time, right? About gaining trust at the point of influence is how you phrased it. Take us into that. I think you consider that a bottoms up approach, and how have you seen that work, and how is it applicable to partnerships today?
Yeah, well, a lot of this, and we're jumping out of partnerships for a second to jump back in, but we're going to talk about psychology for a minute.
Yes, please.
We're all humans, and it doesn't matter if we sell pharmaceuticals or banking, insurance, manufacturing, auto, tech. It doesn't matter what industry we're in, what we're doing. We're all one people, and our brains work in a certain way where we've evolved to a certain level. But the feeling of community is paramount. The problems you see in the world, and the world conflicts, and even city level conflicts, and group level politics and stuff. It's all community, and who you hang around with. You're the average of the 5 people around you and things like that. But for 30 years in this industry, I've just been fascinated with this in terms of, you've just got really big numbers. You've got millions of partners. And, I look at them and I, study them and things like that. And I ask that simple question is, how do you get influence to do what you do? You wake up every day and you choose to do, and you're obviously trying to pay the mortgage, and you're trying to do the normal things, but where does that decision come? And it's interesting that it's almost identical to, a considered purchase. You go through moments, and all of us are trying to get smarter. We're trying to get educated. We're trying to do better. We're trying to improve. But how do we do that? If you ask every partner in the world of every type 3 simple questions: what do you read? Where do you go? And who do you follow? So as an analyst, I can go answer the first 2. There's 14 different spheres of what you read and then how you get smart. I know there's 218 events that Michelle and I will spread our time around. I know there's 143 social groups, Reddits, which are shut down today, and Discord channels and Slack channels and LinkedIn channels. I know that 12% of people love podcasts like this. The number's 12. But they're, when they're walking their dog, when they're driving their cars, they have their podcaster, they rely on this.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? There's 100 podcasts that they trust in our entire channel. 1 million partners, 10 million people revolve down to 100 podcasts total. All of these numbers I have listed out there on the internet, in terms of every single one, the owners, the links, and everything else. I know that there are 85 magazines that people read, for people that like to read magazines in our industry. And so all these 14...
No idea there were that many.
But 10 million people, 1 million partners, comes down to 1,000 watering holes. If you remember Malcolm Gladwell and the tipping point, he talked about Paul Revere, and he talked about those early 1776 days of the U.S., but it was all about the law of a few. And it's amazing how 10 million people can come down to 1,000 places on where you're. What should I do for a living? What should I offer to my customers? What should who should I be working around? Now that this ChatGPT thing is all over the news, my customers are asking about it. How do I go find out how to answer my question, the question of my customer? There's 1,000 places total that do that. And I got to, as an analyst, because I don't have a day job, go the step further. Inside those 218 events, who's speaking? And assigning them scores for doing that. If you're on stage and you're not paying to be on stage, you get 8 points. If you're on stage but paying to be there, you get 2 points. If you do a road show in St. Louis at a Holiday Inn, you get 2 points. If you're, on a podcast, you get 2. But if you're hosting the podcast like you guys, it's 8. So around this, if you're on the magazine's top 100 list, you get 8 points. If you're the board member of CompTIA, the world's largest association, you get 8 points. I started following 5,000 people and assigning points to them. And I published the top 100 in order. This was years and years ago because of a lot of work, hundreds of hours to do this. But Rob Ray came number 1 in 2016. And I would say if I did it today, I think Michelle would probably compete with Rob for that top spot of understanding there's 1,000 watering holes. But this entire industry, 10 million people, come down to 100 super connected, Kim Kardashian type super connectors that make everything work. And that's a study, and there's data behind it. And there's obviously a lot of psychology that goes outside of partnering that supports this. But Rob, on Monday, when he announced me, on stage next, he dropped names like, he called out his friends at Channel Program. He called out CRN Magazine. Like, he dropped some names, in front of 1,300 people. Those were multi-million-dollar mentions. CRN's okay. They're a $130 million media empire. But Channel Program, are guys that are just, and gals that are trying to really build something special from the ground root. They're a startup. $1 million to that startup, could be the ticket to the next thing. And so this study of this industry, right down to that law of a few, is what drives me forward. And I'm just fascinated by it.
So, yeah, I'm like, my wheels are spinning 1,000,000 miles an hour right now. So for you particularly, you've talked about this list, and I'm super fascinated by this list, and then you've taken it a step further and you've created for yourself. And Michelle, I want your opinion on this too, because you've even brought in social selling, but a highly curated LinkedIn community, and it's all related. So what are you doing that others should be doing to build these authentic relationships on LinkedIn versus just like sending a connection? Because we can all have millions of connections, but how are you actually building those relationships with these people?
Yeah, no, great question. And I want to piggyback on why I debated Jay to say he should redo the list again for two reasons. One,
Let's go.
because 10 years have passed. There's new people in the scene who really earned it. There's people who have left or have been kind of quiet. And especially during the pandemic, you saw if you weren't at those 208 events, how did you get seen? And a lot of it was branding and social selling. Podcasts, Facebook groups, Facebook happy hours. There were so many ways that people got very creative about using digital to be very present. And you brought up LinkedIn, which has 900 million business professionals on it. And it's not a tool like Monster to get a job. That's the perception it has for a lot of people. LinkedIn is a tool to communicate. And oftentimes, people go on social media and they lose their personality. They become complete voyeurs or lazy likers. Like, my job is done. No, you've done
Lazy
nothing.
likers.
If Jay came and said something brilliant to Jason or vice versa, would Jay say like and turn around and walk out of the room? No. They would have a conversation. They would build a relationship. That's what happens at the hotel lobby bar at 2 a.m. If you're not engaging and building and nurturing the relationship, you're not doing anything. So there's a tool which Jay and I both use and recommend, and I still do often, is the LinkedIn SSI's tool. So it's just www.linkedin.com/sales/SSI. Everyone plug that in. That's your homework. It's going to tell you.
I just wrote it down.
Okay, right. It'll tell you all of you who you stack rank against your peers and competitors. And it's really just a list of 100 points broken into 4 categories. So 25 points each. What's your brand? Meaning, what you think about yourself doesn't matter. What do people say when you're not in the room? That's your brand. And what do you want to be known for? If you say, I want to be known as a relationship builder, as a thought leader, as an analyst, and I don't publish any thoughts and I don't analyze anything, is that what people are going to perceive me as? No. So you have to think about that. 2, you have to think about your network. Do you have people from your previous job, your college class, your dorm mates? Like, who's in your LinkedIn? When you go to an event, a young girl, this shocked me. She posted a picture of like 250 business cards. It could have been 1,000. I don't know. How much does that look like to you? There was so many business cards. She said, what do I do with them? I said, throw them away. I don't use business cards. I go on LinkedIn and I make a connection. Like, this is asinine.
Absolutely.
We're in 2023. The fax machine wants your business cards. This is, you have to be digital normal. And when I go there, I make connections. I have 20,000 LinkedIn connections. Jay has 30,000 LinkedIn connections, but he's 10 years older. So I'll just say that's why. And when we are
competition.
There's the competition coming out.
But that example, when I make a post, like when I said I'm joining Sonic Wall as their channel chief, 24,000 impressions. How long would it take me to pick up the phone and call one person at a time 24,000 times?
Right.
A one-to-many correlation where that's going to be your output. And there's special things like a job promotion or a job change, of course. But I post 3 to 5 days a week, maybe 7 days a week sometimes. And I post consistently. Jay does as well. And it's not just a reshare of your company's information. It's thought leadership. It's something you put time and effort and energy into to tell the world what your view on something is. And I also share personal things because, as Jay mentioned, I'm a more emotional person. And I believe people buy from people they like. And I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but I am going to be 100% authentically me in my journey. And you're going to see that in my LinkedIn. You're going to know who I am. And I think Jay, I give him some of that because he's very analytical. And so we kind of balance each other. And then the final piece is just engaging with insights and, creating those relationships. Most people are really good at relationships. They're just not great at it online.
Yeah, I find a lot of people struggle on like how to break that wall, right, of just being digital and really taking it to the next level of being, what I call purpose built, right, of actually having purpose behind the relationship and actually getting a chance to know and care and to what you said, to be authentic, right? I put up a post, 2 weeks ago, I kind of went back and forth on putting it up, but about, me stopping drinking and focusing on my performance and my person, my health. And that post went wild. I went to B2B Summit the next week and everybody wanted to talk about it. I'm like, people need to see that authentic side of who we are, especially if you're kind of viewed as a thought leader or someone prolific in the space. And like, it gives them, that, and I don't use the word hope, but, can't think of anything else. So that hope that, they can begin to do the same and share who they really are in the context of business relationships.
Absolutely. We are all women. Congratulations to you on that. That's an amazing accomplishment. And it's something really special that a lot of people are impacted by in their life themselves or their family. So you sharing that resonates with somebody and they see you, they see themselves in you, and they feel something. People don't remember what you say. They remember how you made them feel. That's one of my favorite quotes, Jay's favorite quotes. And how do you make people feel?
That's it.
So I'm totally on board with this. And I think for some people that maybe struggle with this, maybe new partner leaders, doesn't have to be in partners, new professionals, let's just call it that. So I've heard people talk about how this can be a distraction. I know it's not, but let's talk about connecting the dots of how building your personal brand, creating these relationships can really drive value for your company and for your career. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll take that one because I work with 35,000 vendors. I work with 300 distributors. There's a million partners. So I get to work for 30 years around this industry. And I see a lot of mistakes. The biggest mistake people make is spending too much time in the boardroom. They're navel gazing about their program and debating market development funds to the eighth decimal point. The fact of the matter is most of your partners, 99% of them, will never even look at it. They just assume it's there. And the other 1% of your top partners won't accept it. They're going to negotiate something else. So you're literally spending your time debating things internally that have no impact. So I go back to the community mindset. My LinkedIn post yesterday was pointing to a CEO of a security company who flew across the country from Orlando to Chicago to be in front of, 20, 50 people in a Holiday Inn breakout room. As a CEO of a 300-person company that's growing at 484%, would leave the boardroom, lead the investors who just wrote them a $100 million check, and fly into a Holiday Inn to get in front of, it didn't matter, 20, 50, 100, didn't matter, get in front of multiple people and start making that arrangement. That's community mindset. But on the way home, he was all digital, following it up and listening to a podcast and contributing and everything else. But I reflected back 15 years ago. Our small industry has created some billionaires. ConnectWise sold out for billions, and the founders are billionaires. Datto, the founder, Austin McCord, is a billionaire. I remember 15 years ago posting on social when they were in that room with 20 or 30 partners in a Holiday Inn somewhere in the middle of Wichita, Kansas. It was that grassroots, bottoms up community feel. They could have spent time in the boardroom, making their program 2% better. They could have, strategized about the next go-to-market strategy, routes to market. But the community mindset made them billionaires. And I pointed to this particular company, ThreatLocker, and I pointed at that, saying that community mindset is what's making them grow faster than 4,300 competitors. Choices you make every day and what you think you should be doing versus what your gut tells you is the right thing is to get out there at those points of influence, get out there in front of partners, digitally or physically, and make it happen. That's the answer of this entire thing.
Man, what a solid way to wrap that up. Sorry, go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah. No, just to piggyback on that, final thought is that I think Jay and I have our jobs because of just that, right? We take a lot of our career in 30 years, maybe 20 years in this industry, building rapport and relationships, listening and learning and understanding. And for an analyst to say, trust your gut, I feel like that's pretty, because the truth is that it's not always quantifiable. That's the problem.
Right.
You get that question a lot. It's probably one of the hardest things to answer is, okay, so we spend X amount on these events and these sponsorships and we showed up at these places. So what do we have? And
What's the ROI?
What is the ROI? And the truth is that some things take time. That is the long game. Some things happen. You may be retaining partners that haven't seen you in a while, that are happy you're there. They were thinking about going to a competitor, but now you've built a relationship and you've built a value, and they're going to stay with you. And you may never know that if you didn't build that rapport and relationship. You have partners that didn't know you sell all these things in your stack, and now they want to buy more with you. They want to do more with you because they learned more from you. And then the final piece of that is you're going to recruit new partners.
Yeah,
Amen.
absolutely. And I could go on this topic for hours, but we got to wrap it up. And to kind of finish this off, it's like, focus on the things that actually matter to the relationship. Focus on what's going to provide the most value to your partners and in those relationships, and spend time at those points of influence where the people are, and focus on like how you can make those communities better, or as I like to call, how do you make your circles bigger and provide that right level of influence to those circles. So really appreciate that and love that, and love the fact that you guys are thinking about relationships the same way, and kind of why we built this podcast, and how we've also, just like you said, built our career here is giving a damn in relationships and focusing on people first. Now we'll wrap up here in 45 seconds. We like to end the podcast with one kind of fun question. My question to you, McBain, is if you could only travel to one of the 85 plus countries that you've traveled to for the rest of your life, you only get one, for all of your future vacations, which one would it be?
Do we have to agree, or we won't be in the same space?
Oh,
That's up to you. We're not going to draw that line.
Where do you think?
If there was only one, I would stay home.
Oh,
I'm
plot twist.
I would stay in North America.
Okay.
okay.
Michelle, you staying or going?
Well, it is a great question. No, I think this is our home, and I think we live where people vacation. So Florida is a beautiful place to live with palm trees. And I'm a New Yorker, Jay's a Canadian. It feels like we're in a tropical destination. So there is that beauty of that. And I don't know if I could ever not be a Rolling Stone. I mean, I think I was born a nomad and a wanderlust, so it would be a challenge. But I think that America has such beauty, and there's so much diversity in our states. That's certainly a good answer. It wasn't going to be my first answer, but I guess I'll stay with my husband.
Relationships win in the end.
Fair enough. That's it. That's true love.
Well, I know we're up for time. As Jason mentioned, there was so much we could have continued on. So hopefully this is the first of many conversations, but we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining the Friends with Benefit podcast. We consider you friends, and we're looking forward to many, many more conversations. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. We're looking forward to it. A double dinner date.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Do 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 do.